straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily.
Officer Lucky started to say something about, don't do that, don't tense up, stop doing that. And then it just went chaotic.
Kim Potter takes the stand in her own defense for the shooting death of Daunte Wright. Plus, investigators get a warrant for Alec Baldwin's cell phone, looking for clues in the fatal shooting on the set of Rust. And after months of testimony, an end may be in sight in the trial for former Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes. And later, day 12 in Ghislaine Maxwell's federal trial in New York. The defense may be forced to rest sooner than expected. Law and Crime Daily, covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Anjanette Levy, in for Brian Buckmeyer, and with me, as always, is co-host Terry Austin. Well, the defense has rested its case in the trial of Kim Potter. This is day 8 of her manslaughter trial in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, Potter told the jury as she took the stand in her own defense about her extensive background and her police training before she went into detail about what exactly happened on April 11th. That was the day that she shot and killed Daunte Wright. Now, Potter told the jury about being in the car with the officer she was training right before the traffic stop. She told the jury what happened after they pulled over Wright's car. Potter testified about the officer attempting to arrest Wright when they found a warrant for a weapons charge after running his name through the police computer database. Videos captured on body camera show the officers got into a struggle with Wright, and then Potter described what happened next.
They're still struggling, and I can see Sergeant Johnson and the driver struggling over the gear shifts because I can see Johnson's hand, and then I can see his face. He had a look of fear on his face. It's nothing I'd seen before.
Did you say anything when you saw this? What did you do?
We were struggling. We were trying to keep him from driving away. It just went chaotic. And then I remember yelling, "Taser, taser, taser," and nothing happened. And then he told me I shot him.
Now, Potter faces first and second degree manslaughter charges stemming from the shooting death of Wright during the traffic stop in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. That's just a short distance away from Minneapolis. After officers determined Wright had a warrant out for his arrest, body cam footage shows officers attempting to take him into custody. There was a struggle between Wright and the officers. Wright gets back into his car. That's when Potter shoots him in the chest. As his car sped away and hit another car, Wright died. Potter maintains she accidentally pulled her handgun instead of her taser, and there's been a debate over whether her use of force was justified. Now, questioning continued into Friday afternoon with cross-examination from the prosecution. The state focused on Potter's training and annual use of force training. The prosecution then moved to a topic touched on by several witnesses: Potter's firearm and her taser, and the differences between them. And then Potter was asked specifically about what happened on April 11th.
You'd agree that as a police officer, you have the duty to render aid and communicate information to other officers, right?
Yes.
And it's part of your job to assist those who are hurt or injured, true?
Yes.
And to communicate to other officers what you know about a particular scene, right?
Yes.
Give them whatever information you can to help them do their jobs, to help render assistance, things like that, right?
Yes.
But you didn't do any of those things on April 11th, did you?
No.
You stopped doing your job completely. You didn't communicate what happened over the radio, right?
No.
You didn't make sure any officers knew what you had just done, right?
No.
You didn't run down the street and try to save Daunte Wright's life, did you?
No.
You didn't check on the other car that had been hit, did you?
No.
That all happened just down the road from you.
Yes.
You were focused on what you had done, because you had just killed somebody, right?
I'm sorry it happened. I'm so sorry.
Closing arguments in the case are set for Monday, and you can watch them live on the Law and Crime Trial Network. Now, joining Terry and I is Taylor COSS. He's a former prosecutor and currently works as a defense attorney. So, Taylor, I'll start with you. How did Kim Potter do on the stand?
Hi, ladies. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. You know, it was certainly emotional, an emotional tour de force, so to speak. But, you know, it's interesting if you really think about it, like, what is the defense? What is her defense? And her defense, in theory, is that she was justified in using it because of fear. I'm not sure that that came across. What did come across is a sympathetic person who clearly does appear to be sorry for what she did. But also, when I watched the cross-examination and I realized how quickly she fell apart right in the middle of the stressful situation, how she was no longer able to do her job or do even the most basic functions of a police officer, I wondered to myself, how did she ever get this job? And it's really just a tragedy.
It really is a tragedy, Taylor. I couldn't have put it any better. And it really does appear that she panicked when she said she saw the look on the other officer's face. She said he looked very scared. So she obviously panicked. Terry, I'm wondering, do you think that Kim Potter's testimony was effective for her?
Antoinette, I think she was not effective. As a matter of fact, I think she hurt her case. The video spoke volumes. It was very effective. It really showed her as someone who had remorse. But when she was on that stand, she came across as being evasive. She actually refused to admit even the smallest thing that the prosecution was trying to get her to say. So I think it makes it look like to the jury that she's trying to be somewhat, evasive with her answers. And she also is blaming everyone else. She blamed Lucky for stopping the car in the first place. She blamed the department for saying that they didn't train her well enough. So I don't think she was effective. I think she came across poorly.
Very interesting take from Terry and Taylor. So it'll be interesting to see what the jury does with this when they get that case, probably sometime late Monday afternoon. We're going to move on now to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and that is where a former police detective who fired the shot that killed Breonna Taylor last year remains off the force after a review board upheld his termination. In May of 2020, Officer Miles COSGROVE was part of a drug raid involving Taylor's ex-boyfriend at her home. It was early morning, and 26-year-old Taylor was asleep with her boyfriend. That is when plainclothes officers barged into her apartment. Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, had a license to carry a weapon, and he actually believed that someone was breaking into their home. And that is when Walker fired a single shot, wounding an officer. And then as officers returned fire, COSGROVE shot 16 times, killing Taylor. COSGROVE's chief at the time said the officer violated standard operating procedures and did not activate his body-worn camera. No charges have been filed related to Taylor's death, but another officer, Brent Hankinson, faces endangerment charges for firing his weapon at neighboring apartments. Now, still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the fraud trial for a Silicon Valley businesswoman, Elizabeth Holmes. It may come to an end very soon as we near verdict watch. And then later on, we are going to talk about Alec Baldwin, the shooting death investigation on the set of Rust. Police want to search Alec Baldwin's phone. We'll have that and more after the break.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTube TV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTube TV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back. A settlement has been reached in a civil lawsuit for the families of the shooting victims in the Parkland High School shooting. Now, Broward County School District officials approved the $26 million payout. You may recall on Valentine's Day 2018, Nicholas Cruz shot and killed 17 students and staff at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. At least 17 other people were injured. Families of the victims are also being paid nearly $130 million after reaching a settlement with the Department of Justice for its failure to follow up on tips about Cruz. In October, Cruz pleaded guilty to the 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. His defense team has repeatedly asked that the death penalty be taken off the table. Each time the judge has denied that request. The sentencing phase is scheduled to begin for Cruz in January. In other settlement news, the Boy Scouts of America reach a tentative agreement to compensate survivors of sexual abuse. This settlement offer, increased now by $800 million, makes it the largest sex abuse settlement fund in history. The compensation fund is expected to exceed $2.6 billion. In February 2020, the Boy Scouts of America filed for bankruptcy as the organization faced a flurry of hundreds of sexual abuse lawsuits. The settlement offer will be divided among more than 82,000 boys and men who say they were sexually abused as Boy Scouts. Switching gears now and on to Alec Baldwin and the shooting investigation that resulted in the death of a cinematographer on the set of the film Rust. That happened in New Mexico, and sheriff's detectives have requested a search warrant for actor Alec Baldwin's cell phone. Investigators want to look at the actor's past calls, photos, videos, and messages to learn any new information about what happened. 42-year-old cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed, and the director Joel Souza was injured when Baldwin fired a weapon on the set last October. That gun was actually a prop, but had a live round in it. Baldwin claimed in his first interview about the shooting that he never pulled the trigger. Investigators conducted interviews after the shooting, which made them aware of emails and text messages about the production. And that led to a warrant for Baldwin's phone after the actor and his lawyers refused to hand it over without one. The warrant says the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, said Baldwin was not supposed to pull back the revolver's hammer. She claims that someone tried to sabotage the set. So let's bring in Taylor COSS, a defense attorney, and Terry Austin, who's here as always. Taylor, I want to start with you. A lot of attorneys, when I posted about this on Twitter, said that they feel this is a fishing expedition. But is it possible that the investigators know more than they're saying and what they've put in the affidavit for the warrant?
So that's possible. You would think that they would put their best foot forward and let the judge know, who's going to be evaluating the affidavit for the search warrant, everything they have, because they don't want to get, they don't want the judge to deny the warrant. But on the same point, it is possible that they know something that they're not telling us. This is a tabloid frenzied case. And if anything leaks, then it would get around so quickly and perhaps hamper the investigation. It's interesting to me, I want to know, are they looking for things that were on his phone leading up to the incident, perhaps admissions of behavior on set, things like that? Or are they looking for post-incident admissions from Baldwin that might go to prove his negligence? It will be interesting to find out what they're actually looking for and what, if anything, they find.
It will be interesting to see what they find. And actually, we should mention that Helena Hutchins's phone was mentioned in this, and the fact that she had been sending and receiving texts for a couple of months about the production before it started. So, Terry, I'm wondering what your thoughts are about them wanting to look at Alec Baldwin's phone. What do you think of it?
Well, I think it's strange that he initially refused to voluntarily produce it. I mean, what is he trying to hide? He's not going to delete anything, so why not just produce your phone? I think authorities, based on what Taylor was saying, want to know before and after. What did he know about any safety problems in the crew, and also after, what did he admit? Maybe he did pull the trigger. So it'll be interesting to see what is in that phone.
It certainly will be, and we're going to keep close tabs on that. All right, moving on now, straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the jury hears closing arguments from both sides in the federal fraud trial of Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes. Plus, the defense is wrapping up its case, and has wrapped up its case, actually, in the federal sex crimes trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. That's still ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Welcome back. The jury will start deliberating soon in the federal fraud trial of former Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes. This comes after the prosecution and the defense made closing arguments to the jury. On Thursday, the prosecution told jurors that Holmes had the chance to be honest, but that she instead chose to defraud her investors. Prosecutors said, quote, that choice was not only callous, it was also criminal. Prosecutors argue that Holmes's text messages and emails show she knew about Theranos' shortcomings and intended to commit fraud. The defense, meanwhile, countered, saying the government's case didn't give the full story, saying there were some missing witnesses, and that the case was more complicated than the prosecution said. Defense attorneys also reminded the jury that they can only return a guilty verdict if they believe Holmes is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Holmes is the founder and former CEO of Theranos, a Silicon Valley lab touted to be a breakthrough blood testing company. She is accused of lying about the technology to investors to get more funding. She once claimed the now defunct company Theranos would revolutionize blood testing, but later tests found many issues with the technology. Holmes is charged with 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and 9 counts of wire fraud. If convicted, she could face 20 years in prison, plus be ordered to pay restitution to her investors. So let's bring Taylor COSS back in, along with Terry Austin. Taylor, 15 weeks of testimony, that's a lot to go through. Where do you think the jury starts with this, and how long do you think they'll deliberate?
I mean, this could be a doozy. This could be a long one. A lot of stuff to absorb, but I do think in terms of where they will start, I thought the prosecutor was really effective when they looked at the jury in the eye and said, listen, don't convict her based on anything that I'm saying. Convict her on what she said, her own words, her own text messages, her own statements, and her own admissions. Even the admission, for instance, that she fabricated reports by putting the Pfizer logo in the top, corner. Why would she do that if she knew it was legitimate? Little things like that. So over the course of these months of testimony, they've heard tons of communications and things that she herself said that could lead to the belief that, of course, she knew her product was not what she said it was.
And Terry, just briefly, what do you think is going to happen with this case? Will she be convicted?
It's all going to depend on what that jury sees. Are they sympathetic? Do they think she's just being attacked because she's a woman, because other companies have failed? Or do they think she intentionally tried to defraud all of those people? So we'll see what they have to say. But she could face 220 years in prison if she's found guilty on every count.
Yeah, we shall see. All right, when we come back, Ghislaine Maxwell's defense has wrapped up. They were expected to call dozens of witnesses, but they didn't. And did she take the stand? We're going to talk about all of that when we come back. Welcome back, and we're on to New York now, where the defense has rested its case in the federal sex trafficking trial of British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell. And this comes after the defendant herself, Maxwell, said she would not be taking the stand in her own defense. Now, on Friday, Maxwell addressed the judge saying, quote, "The government has not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt, so there is no need for me to testify." Maxwell, a British socialite and former companion of Jeffrey Epstein, faces 6 felony sex crime charges. Prosecutors say she recruited and groomed young teenage girls for Epstein for sexual abuse. Epstein faced similar charges in 2019. He died by suicide in his jail cell before his case went to trial. Maxwell's defense says she's a scapegoat for Epstein. The defense was actually going to call as many as 35 witnesses, but it seems only a handful took the stand. Friday morning, her team asked for more time to locate the witnesses, but the judge said no dice. She denied that request and said the defense should rest if they could not find the witnesses. Now, the 3 witnesses did testify, one of them being an ex-girlfriend of Epstein's. That woman was brought up in testimony last week by one of Maxwell's accusers, who said that that woman and her husband were her first sexual encounter after her training by Maxwell. Now let's bring Taylor COSS and Terry back in. Taylor, I'll start with you. Did the defense do a good enough job here of defending Ghislaine Maxwell against these charges?
Probably not. Probably not. There is no Jeffrey Epstein. So the face of this tragedy is Ghislaine Maxwell. And, what was once promised to be a big, hearty defense kind of fell apart at the last minute. And I don't feel strongly that she did enough to get out of the shadow of Jeffrey Epstein.
Terry, do you think that Maxwell made the right decision by not taking the stand?
I do think that was the right decision, even though this is a he said, she said sort of case. I think here she would have been cross-examined, and that would have been extremely difficult for her to defend all of these actions. And I think, the defense made the right decision here to just keep her away and let the evidence, speak for itself.
All right. And we'll see how it'll shake out. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.